Last week, the Home Affairs Ministry said it's investigating the unregistered Singapore chapter of South Korea's Shincheonji Church. Now, I mentioned earlier that the church is at the center of the coronavirus outbreak in Daegu. The Straits Times news editor Zakir Hussain spoke to two ex-members from the Singapore chapter. So, Zakir, fascinating accounts from these two former members. What were some of the most interesting things they shared with you?
I think it was the experience of how they were targeted and recruited. You know, it started out innocuous, someone just inviting you through a friend or, you know, as a concerned fellow Christian to kind of attend these classes. And it was only several weeks on and several months on when they became aware that, oh, this was not your usual church, not your usual Bible study group. You know, it seemed to focus a bit more on sort of the prophecy surrounding the end times, you know, when, and it sort of all builds up to when the group and its instructors reveal that this Korean man who's leader of the group, he's claimed to be, you know, a messenger, Messiah. He's revealed to them as the leader, and by then I think folks who are already deeply involved would find it quite hard to leave as one of the former members who took part in the services kind of experienced. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that it is quite hard to leave this church. How did these, you spoke to two women, right?
Yes, that's right.
I think you called them Linda and Shanice.
That's right.
Not their real names. Yeah. Okay, so how did these two women manage to leave the church?
I think one of them had sort of severe niggling doubts and decided to look online, and she hadn't been a full member yet, but she found out, you know, all about the group and former members describing it as a cult and its deceptive practices, and she felt something was not right. So she just texted, you know, someone she'd been in contact with who was at the classes and said, I'm not going anymore, and that was it. Someone else, I think, left a little later. I mean, you can't just stop attending services and cut off contact, and I think that was the way they sort of stopped taking part in its activities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, MHA said investigations were already underway before the church in South Korea made headlines, you know, amid the whole coronavirus outbreak in South Korea. So the outbreak accelerated these investigations by MHA.
Right, yeah.
But what was MHA looking into in the first place?
I think from what it said about the case, the church, or at least the group, was not upfront about its name and intentions, and it tried to register, you know, under another name. It tried to register consultancies and so on. And it was when MHA was reviewing the registration of one of these French companies that red flags came up. And I think the group's folks here were aware that if they tried to register using the full name, they wouldn't be allowed to set up shop here. And so they set up these front companies, you know, a training consultancy, and that lets you rent an office space and collect, you know, payments if you wanted to, and so on. And, you know, and as it turned out, I think MHA named a couple of these companies that were set up, right? And I think our colleagues went down to look at the premises, but, you know, no one had been around and so on.
Okay.
So my suspicion is I think the members are lying low for the meantime, and, you know, while investigations are ongoing. I think why the authorities initiated or accelerated action was sort of because, you know, there might have been public health concerns, especially if there were members who had traveled to Daegu and back.
Of course.
Yep.
Well, I want to just delve into a little bit of the writing and the preparing of this story. So why were these two former members, like I said, Linda and Shanice, not their real names, you know, why were they willing to come out and share their story with you?
I think they got in touch, and I think they, having read over the past week and a bit about the developments in, you know, South Korea, about the coronavirus and how this church's secretive practices were at the center of it, I think they felt that they had been, you know, deceived and, you know, almost manipulated into attending its activities and, you know, when they were in. So I think that was why they wanted to sort of warn others, especially young adults. If you notice, the group actually, you know, it claims to be a church and it claims to have its own unique interpretation of Christianity, but it was anything but mainstream. And so they wanted to warn others, you know, against sort of being deceived.
I see. Well, thank you so much, Zakir, for coming onto the show. That was Zakir Hussain, news editor at the Straits Times, and you can read his story at straitstimes.com.